Well, today on Mr. Rodder's Neighborhood, I show you how to improperly extract bolts, or a method that I came up with. I thought worked pretty good, but the last cylinder head made me look like a fool. So I practiced quite a bit on a couple other cylinder heads that really had the most broken bolts I've ever seen in my life, and I'll give you the rundown on it. Okay, so as a Buick fan, you're gonna find yourself in a situation like this probably more often than not if you're doing anything with small blocks or big block Buicks, anything made after 1967. These things are notorious for breaking off exhaust manifold bolts, and especially if let's say you're doing a cheap rebuild at home and you go to take the exhaust manifolds off, they'll break the bolts, especially if the engine's been sitting for quite a long time. And it's generally these top bolts, and the reason for that is the holes are not blind. They're actually open in the back, which allows moisture to get in the back. As this thing heats and contracts and expands during its heating cycle from when it was running, it will collect moisture behind it, as well as it'll also be in the exhaust manifold. Some of these bolts are extra long. Sometimes you get the ones broke off here at the end because the exhaust manifold is like 3 inches thick or 2.5 inches thick right here. But generally in these top bolt holes, it's because they're open in the back, and that allows moisture to get in. So whenever it rains, the humidity's high, whatever, and the engine goes from its heating cycle from warm to cool, it'll collect moisture in these holes and it'll actually lock these bolts into place. Now, I just did a set of heads last week. I had to remove 12 broken exhaust manifold bolts, and that's the most I've ever had removed from a set of heads ever in my life. That's probably on the extreme side, but the 12 bolts in a row essentially gave me the opportunity to work out something that I thought was pretty interesting, and I thought I'd show everybody how I did it, because you've seen it before with the welding method where you weld a nut onto the end and then try to work it in and out. But what ends up happening is normally when they're broke off this short, your nut you're only able to weld it on one side, and most of the time that weld will break inside the bolt, or the bolt itself will give up again and cut it even shorter down to like here. That's exactly what happened to this one. But I've had this head, I've done this before on this head, not this way, but I have tried to extract the bolts on this head before, and it was absolutely painful as all get out. But when I did the 12 bolts in a row, it gave me the opportunity to find out something pretty interesting that I've never done before, and I've never seen anyone else do it. So I decided to do a video on it, because this happens a lot on Buicks, where you either have to cut this flush or take it to the machine shop and then they re-drill it and tap it, or you cut this flush and you drill it and tap it yourself, or you try to drill the bolt out and then you end up getting the hole off center. That's why I leave drilling these things like to the last resort. But luckily this method seems to work pretty good, and I ended up getting all 12 bolts out. It did take me a long time, but a lot of it was time due to inexperience with getting it out. And when I figured out this method, it works out pretty good. So what you're going to need is some basic WD-40 or your favorite penetrant oil. And I try to use stuff that's not as flammable as the kerosene-based stuff or motor oil-based stuff, or just maybe crude oil-based stuff. But this is WD-40. This is virtually like fish oil, right? So that way you get less of a fire when you try to weld a nut on here and you didn't get it all clean. This thing's a lot more, less, I mean, it's still flammable, but not like kerosene-based stuff, or like, say, PB Blaster, okay? But this one I'll leave for last, because it is definitely the hardest. Well, actually, I probably won't leave it for last, but I'll do it second, so you can see actually how I do it on this one. But, so we're going to start down here on this end. This is the broken off exhaust stud. Again, it's got the hole that's open in the back. The easiest thing to do is I squirt a little bit of WD-40 in there, which is, like I said, it's probably not the best penetrant for this, but it does work well. So here's the next thing. Get a small hammer, and you don't want to whack on this thing where you're going to break the ear off. Okay? If you've ever seen or have done in the past, if you get a bolt stuck in a socket, or a nut even stuck in a socket, and they're hard to get out, one of the old school methods was take the socket, you lay it on a piece of metal or the garage floor, and you whack it with a hammer. What happens is it causes that socket to expand and contract at a really rapid rate, which releases that bolt or that nut, and they generally fall out at that point. Well, the same thing applies here, because what we're going to do is we put the penetrant oil on there, and right now, as you know, you've done this a million times probably trying to extract bolts, that's going to do absolutely nothing. I could let that sit for 9 months and it's not going to do anything to this broken off exhaust manifold bolt. But now that we've applied this, there's some down there sitting around the edge of the bolt where it's been chamfered, where the bolt was actually, where the hole was actually drilled and tapped to begin with. So since that's sitting in there, what I do is I take the hammer and you start tapping it. Now, as you can see, I'm not beating it to death. I'm just tapping this. But what happens is, and you can start to see it now, I'll get the camera and zoom it in so you can see, but it's causing that bolt and the threads to subsequently expand and contract as pressure is being applied by that hammer. But what it does is it works that penetrant oil into the actual threads of the bolt. Okay, and I actually tapped one, or I actually tapped on top of one last week. Earlier this week, that I tapped so long that the oil started dripping out from the back, and that's when I realized that actually works really well. Now, with the application of heat and all that other stuff, it starts to make a huge difference over time. So let me grab the camera. I'm going to bring it down so you can see. All right. There is our bolt. Let me take my gloves off here. There's our broken bolt. And what we're going to do is zoom out. Zoom out. Okay, brain. All right. And then we're going to tap it a few times. Now you can see that black ring starting to form around it. Okay? That's the rust actually coming out of that hole with the penetrant oil in it. Okay, so you can see you got that ring of crap coming out around it. Some of them are better than others. This one seems to be pretty stuck in there pretty good. And I have cleaned it off before because I tried to do this before on this cylinder head months ago. But I kind of just gave it up and put it in the back corner for now. But all right, so now we're going to move on to step 2. Now this might not work exactly every time the first time. You might have to do it multiple times, but we'll get on to making it easy for you so you can see it. And of course, I'll probably end up fast forwarding through a bunch of this stuff. But, okay, so there's our exhaust manifold bolt. I'll move you a little closer so maybe the view's a little better. All right, so we've tapped on it a few times. And now we're going to take our nut, which is just a grade 5. I buy these in bulk at Tractor Supply. Okay. And I've already mushroomed the head enough that it doesn't want to fit well, which is not that big of a deal. Right? Because we'll just have to build it up some. All right. So building it up some is actually probably going to help you in the long run. Because it's not so much the art of welding on it, it's the actual heat application that helps out. So give me a second, we'll build it up some, and then I'll peen down each weld, which actually makes it stronger, which forges it, and then you keep building on top until the nut actually fits on there. So while I let that cool, I'm gonna do the same thing over here, except for I gotta build this bolt up right away. Let's see all the black crap coming out of this one. Oh, maybe the camera's not even on this. Let me move it over. You there? Alright, so just wiggle it back and forth. So I gotta go back to paint it some more. Alright, so let's stubber. This is a great video so far. All right. Ta-da! Oh, goddamn. So there she is, finished up. What a pain in the butt. Still took a lot longer than what I expected. I thought I was gonna have them out pretty quick, The only one that seemed to come out quick was the center one, but that far one was a big pain in the butt. Over there where I got the, kind of like where the ground was at on the far end. But that's kind of what I got for you today. Hopefully you enjoy it. I'll see you later. Oh, hey, and don't forget, we're having an event called the No Name Nationals, Sykeston, Missouri, September 30th, October 1st. It's at Jeffers Motorsports Park. You can register, you can pre-register on nonamenationals.com. You can even buy pre-registered spectator tickets on there. You'll save yourself $5 on the spectator ticket. At the gate, it's going to be $20. Pre-registered is $15 a day. So make sure you head on over to nonamenationals.com and get yourself enrolled.